of experience in the banking industry and significant expertise in board leadership. He is the immediate past CEO of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and has held leadership roles across several prestigious institutions. He currently serves as the founder and pro-chancellor of Hillside University of Science and Technology in Ekiti State. He's a fellow and past president of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Mr. Jaiyeola is also a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria and a member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Scotland. He's also a fellow of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government's Senior Executive Program. He has made significant contributions to public leadership, serving on boards such as the Nigeria Improving Business Environment for Prosperity and Nigerian National Advisory Board for Impact Investing, among others. Please welcome with a resounding ovation for his first time to the platform, Mr. Jaiyeola.
Please, you may sit down. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Poju and Sister Toyin, for inviting me. And thank you for all of you watching us live here and those who are there watching us across the globe. You know, when you speak after a lot of people have spoken, then you sometimes want to ask yourself, so what next? But I will start by speaking to a few of the issues that were raised so that I can go to my... You know, when the convener opened up, he referred to a book, The Nature of Capital, and was talking about how we need to work on capital. You know, I read a book about the mystery of capital by Hernando de Soto. And upon the time we brought him to Nigeria at the Economic Summit to help us see how can we liberate ourselves as a nation. And there were a number of things we talk about, but still remain undone. You see, Nigeria has tremendous assets, but we are an illiquid nation. And unless and until we begin to see how do we bring liquidity out of what we have, we will still be struggling. And I give you an example. If today we decide to take land from our acts, land use decree, put everything inside our law. So even if you have your house, you cannot securitize it and use it to raise money. And every attempt to take land from the Constitution to allow us to securitize it has been met with fight. The governors won't let you. Why? Because they sign the paper for you. But I tell you, if all of the land we have, if we securitize it, you see how money will flow to you and me. You can use your hand to raise capital. Pastor Poju wants us to talk about the MSMEs, right? Many of them have those assets tied down from what you said, and they're not raising money. Today, we are going across the world looking for money. And I listened to Mr. President this morning, and he said, we have attracted $30 billion. Well done. But we have more than $100 billion plus here in Nigeria. And I give you one example. Number one, take our NNPC. Take what we have in there. To produce oil in Nigeria, most times we do what we call a JV, joint venture. So because I'm taking off from crude oil because Roman talked about oil, and I want to use that to see, we can mine the oil, but like you ended is what we do with it. So you can imagine today, ExxonMobil just spoke with our president that they are willing to invest $10 billion in Nigeria. And many more people want to introduce. But you know why they can't move? NNPC hold them captive. Because for every amount they are willing to bring in, because we are JV owners, we must bring our own money too. And many a times we don't have. We used to call it reducing cash costs, we pay them. We don't have. And all we need to do is either to change the ownership, maybe we'll run like LLNG run their ownership, or we give them more and money will come. So on this platform, I want to request two quick things first. Mr. President, let us use our balance sheet. Nigeria has tremendous balance sheet that we can leverage on to raise money, and we don't need to be going about begging people. When they see our side, investor will bring, and we can move ahead. If you know many assets of Nigeria that have been abandoned, right? If you count it and put it together, it's wasting. And I give you one other example. I know many of you know Ikoyi very well. You see that National Secretariat? It's been there. There was dispute about who we were sold to or not sold to. But is that a reason why we leave it idle? National Stadium, it's there. Let us take our assets, let's liquefy it, and begin to raise money so that we are not beggars. Because when you own assets, what you want to do with your asset is to see how you can raise money out of it. You don't necessarily have to sell it away like run and sell and forget. But you can securitize it and raise money from it. The second thing again is that please take our land from the Constitution. Let us be able to use our land. And Nando's Dasoto came to Nigeria. He told us about how we can do what we need to do and what we need to do. So, but again, I just want to drop that so that it might be part of the things that we have from conclusions from here. So, I wanted to talk about, a lot of the things they've talked about are things that are germane. Are there potentials in Nigeria? Yes. Do we need to work on security, infrastructure, education, health of people? Yes, I agree with you. We need to work on all of those things. But there are things that are stopping us from unlocking our potentials. And there are soft issues in the room. Dr. Omole did try to talk a bit about it. He didn't finish it. But I believe that I will talk about it. I'm using this particular diagram. This is not original to me. It's a man called Patrick Lenkohi. He had used it to do many things. It's to talk about the team Nigeria. If you want to unlock the potential of Nigeria, we look at the team. Are we working a functional or a dysfunctional team? And listen to me, when I talk about team, I'm not talking about the federal government alone. I'm talking about the federal government, the state government, the non-government agency like church like this, community, and our homes. Are we working a functional team? The first thing that makes a sign of a dysfunctional team is that there is a lack of trust. Hello? There is a lack of trust. And I will come back and ask you do we trust ourselves in Nigeria? You know why there is always lack of trust? You know why people don't trust each other? Because when we work as a team and everybody knows what to do, everybody is a big man, everybody can do it, if you are in that team, you begin to ask yourself, so I'm the only one who doesn't know here. Like most parents always tell their children who were first in class, right? They were the best in mathematics. They were the best in class. If you were the best in class and all of us were in the same class, then who took class? What is wrong in stepping up and say, I don't know this thing. How can you help me? Our leaders today, and I'm not talking about leaders at federal alone, federal, state, non-governmental agencies everywhere, they all come with that attitude of what? We know it all. We know how to do it. And when a man comes with the attitude of you know it all, and you work with that person, there's a tendency for you to ask yourself, I'm the only one here who don't know. And because you are the only one who don't know, you know what happened to you? First and foremost, you realize that you create an atmosphere where there is no trust. And because there is no trust, a number of things happen to you. One is that they try to, some of us, our eyes are trying to, So when there's no trust in that environment, the first thing you see is that people don't talk. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to be seen to be weak. And therefore, everybody hides. For how long are we going to realize the fact that the way God created us, he created us in part. We know in part, we do in part. But when we work in an environment where all of us own up to the fact that I need you, you need me, we'll do better. And so we work in a place where there is lack of trust. Even in our offices, they will tell you to prove that you hide information from the next person, and you keep hiding and you keep hiding. And because there is lack of trust, what builds upon it is that there is a lack of conflict. We are afraid to do what? To confront each other. There are a lot of things today in Nigeria that if you had sat down to talk about them and look at them, they will have helped our problem. We refuse from talking about it. Even in the church, Pastor Boju, right? We refuse. There's division. Everybody, you do your own, I do my own. Lack of conflict. We all walk on eggshells. I was listening to something that happened in the National Assembly, and they were talking about, do we go back to regional, or do we do this federal and co? And you saw that the entire northern group came together and said, we don't want regional. From the National Assembly. And it's very simple. Because we don't trust each other, we can't talk about your concerns, my concerns, and all put together. And when you have an environment where there is lack of concern, the next thing that happens to you, of course, is that you then realize that people are not committed. They don't commit themselves to anything. And so when we talk about civil servants and co, it is a function of where we are coming from. And therefore, people don't commit. Everybody carry as far as you carry. And when you stop, they do what? They stop. And vice versa. And so when there is no commitment, nobody is held accountable. Do you know that sometimes policies are taken and because of who is recommending it and where is the person coming from? Not because he's good. And I'm the first to tell you that federal character principle is not a bad principle. Because when you're doing a federation, we all work together with the mind of, you want to give everybody a sense of togetherness and a sense of belonging. But every quarter of Nigeria have very good minds. The problem is not bringing those that are good to table. The problem is people not being, and so we're not accountable. And because we're not accountable, we don't pay attention to results. And I want us to look at it. But if you do all of those things where we can be vulnerable, I can tell Pastor, I don't know, help me. And I can tell myself that, and everybody knows that is candor. We can then discuss our shortcomings and see how we can help each other. But we've talked today about the potentials that Nigeria have. And I tell people from when I was born, Nigeria has always been a potential. When I was born. And the great Zeke of Africa called Nigeria the African giant, right till then. But today I wear the giant. There was a graph here that I decided not to go into to show because almost everybody is spoken about it. In 1960, in terms of GDP per capita, we were higher than China. And that continued until the year 2000. We were higher. But you see, when China decided to lock themselves down to do those discussions, how to move forward, we're still busy trying to not tell ourselves the truth. Nobody is accepting responsibility. If there is a problem, it must be that brother that is not of Niger. If there's a problem, that must be that brother that is out of Niger, rather than sitting down and addressing issues. So unless we deal with these issues that I have identified here, and I do agree with you, our young people are wonderful, there's potential in them, but unless we do some work, it just be a problem. 4 things I have listed here that we will need to, why we fail. Number 1, the problem of leadership. Problem of leadership. And again, I'm not looking at leadership from federal. There's a tendency for us to always look at the man at the center. And the problem of leadership did not just start today. At least everybody that have done it historically have shown to us that the problem of leadership had been there since independence. Apart from those in the First Republic that did a few things, right when we went to the war and after the war, we just kept missing it. One of the factors is that we're not growing our assets, we're not growing our infrastructure, we're growing people. Between 1960 and 1999, Nigeria moved from about 40 million people to about 120 million people. That's what we're at. But from 1999, 2000 to date, we're not talking about 230 million people. A growth of about 120%. And we're not increasing infrastructure. We're not building schools. Our hospitals are not there. What do we expect? Those nations you talk about, China and co., as they were growing and lifting people out of poverty, they were providing infrastructure. And there's problem of leadership even at our sub-national level. Sometimes when people criticize Mr. President, I do ask them, I say, what are we doing with our governors? What are we doing with the people in the private sector? What are we doing with those of us in the non-government? Because the challenge is this. The leaders are people who are not just there to, why do you go to, I believe first and foremost, that leadership is for service. You take up leadership role to offer service. Because what people have done is that they have bequeathed some trust in you. They've bequeathed unto you the power to use natural resources that belong to all in the interest of the people. Unfortunately, because we don't have a clear way of raising leaders and putting people to power, anybody just come to power and they do what? They hijack us. And when they want to hijack us, you know what they play on? They play on tribe, they play on religion. And all of us start gyrating. And they say, it's my brother, it's my whatever. Absence of leadership because they don't want to serve. Every leader come into office to be able to solve a problem. One of the questions I ask is that, what are the problems that our leaders are solving? One major problem we all know we're going to get to today is lack of food. Inflation is high. At the NESG, we are talking about this food position about 5 years ago. Because the trend shows that we will run out of food. This is where I'm not going to spare the church, Pastor. All of us, I know we do empowerment. Thank God, Dr. Omole called it entitlement. It's time for George to sit down and say, if we are part of those adding to price of food, how do we begin to grow food? Hello? How do we begin to grow food? If all the churches, and I'm not talking about church, the other Muslim clan, if we come together and deal with our agri problems, Nigeria will have enough to eat and will have enough to... Don't tell me it's not our role. No. When the founders of faith came into Africa and Nigeria, they saw that education and health was our problem, right? And they invested in education.
My name is Victor Amodu.
Today, we need to work on food. That doesn't excuse governors. Government to do its own, but we need to do the people. Ministry is about not only ministering to the spiritual man, but also ministering toward the physical well-being. So leadership, we have a responsibility. And thank God that God has put a lot in the church. Let's show the leadership in this area. And let's show them that if they're not doing right, we will know how to do it right. After all, the leaders we have today, where did they come from? From amongst us. Whether you voted for them or not, they came from amongst us. And some of them are still our friends. So when you talk about leadership, and leadership exists everywhere. Somebody talked earlier on about even the man on the street. What is it we do? So let's look at that. Many of us need to hold our governors and ask questions. Our governors have done what I call regulatory capture, and even private sector. I was talking to a friend some time ago, and I said, but Jaiyeola gag, exist everywhere? I said, yes. But what did they use it to do? Somebody was reading, I think it was Dr. Omole, about the founding fathers of the Americans, what they are. Many of them were slave traders. But what did they do? They spent their resources on education, on infrastructure, and making the environment very good. So we need to rethink where leadership is. How are you using the leader? What problem are you solving? The second thing here we look about is we need to look at our eroding national value system if we must lift up potential. What's our value system? I was involved in one of the development plan. And we sat down, we said, let us find out, what is Nigeria's value system? Do you know, what do we value really? We sat down in the house, in the room, and we cannot think about what is it that elicits entire support from us, apart from football. Do you know that when there is football, it doesn't matter where you have come from, we all come together. But today, Nigeria is a nation where what we value is ego, kudi, money. And we all forget that money is just a means to an end. If you start your life beginning with the end in mind, it's easier for you to know that what do we need money for? Many people are so afraid, and it's fear that brings it, and they have taken so much money, more than themselves and their children and everybody will ever need, and yet the people are poor. So we need to reorientate our value system. The value of fairness. You know, we're not fair to each other. Some people say, okay, it's our own, let's keep it. But when you were there, did you take care of them? Be fair to your people. So we need to sit down and ask ourselves, what are the values that we want to live for? I mean, we are hardworking people, but it's important to look at it. The other thing that is mitigating against looking at this potential is trust. Trust has been completely eroded. When a government will come to the national telly, and all they are telling you is what? Lies. When ministers will stand, and all they are telling you is what? Is lies. When parents will stay in their house, and what they are telling their children is what? Lies. How will they trust you? And I tell people, you want us to trust you? Please make yourself trustworthy. And that's one of the things. The problem today is that even if government is working hard, people don't believe government. Because government will not come. Rather than government say, oh, these are challenges that we are facing, people don't believe government. You know why? Because you tell me you don't have money. And the kind of dresses and the things you are wearing and the things you go around, I don't understand. Are we really saying the truth? Lead by example. Our challenge today is that we've lost trust. And again, you see, one of the things I've tried to bring here is to make sure that we don't limit it to only the federal government. It's state government, it's a private sector, and co. All for a long time in my life, one of the things I try to do is that how can we get the private sector and the public sector to talk together? But when we move forward, why? Because there is distrust. They don't trust each other. The public servant people think that this guy just want to come and take advantage of us. And those of us in the private sector feel that, this guy just there, they are stealing money, they are not interested, and what do we do? So we need to deal with trust matter. The next thing we need to do, is, of course, is that we need to take ownership and responsibility. Everybody just find an alibi. You blame this for that, you blame that for that. You wake up in the morning, you are sleeping, you are lying down, you are not doing anything, there is no direction, there is no vision, and you blame government for it. Hello. Stop blaming people. Take charge of your life. There is a book that I always make sure that every young people around me, by the ages of 14, they begin to read. It's a 7 habits of highly effective people. There's one for things. And the first thing is what? Be proactive. Take control of your life. You have sphere of concern, and you also that you can influence. Work on your area of influence, and begin with the end in mind. We are quick to not taking ownership. There is a problem at home. A father had not worked enough to bring food on the table for people to eat. Or when he had brought the money, he has misused the money. Who is the alibi? Government. Regional government collects money, right? Rather than spend the money, they've taken part of the money to FX and taken it out, they will say, government. We need to take responsibility. And so what do we need to do? I think we need to rebuild us by what? First and foremost, let's go back to those institutions that make things work. We need to rebuild our institution. I mean, you're talking about the civil service, sir. I'm not a child of a civil servant, but sometimes I look at civil service and say we deliberately destroyed the civil service so that we can do whatever it is we wanted to do. This same nation that was about the second or third best civil service in the entire Commonwealth, where we had the lack of Olaoye, Adesina, Ida, Ahmed Joda in this country. We killed it. When we decided to say, you know what, then you will tell you, if you did government, they will tell you the characteristics of civil service is what? Professionalism, permanency, and co. We started driving them away. The day they began to drive them away, that's when they decided to take future in their hand. We need to rebuild institutions. It's important. If we must get our potentials right, we'll build institutions. The story was told me about the old Western region when the sage, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, took over government. And he needed to raise his ministers and people. And some of the people said, oh, we're not joining you, we're not interested. And he told them, if you don't join us, some people will come, make bad rules and regulation, and it will affect your business. Which was why you saw people like Chief Bode Thomas coming in government to work. The Majacodemy, all of them came in and they gave their best. We need to help the civil service. Hello? I'm looking forward to a time when senior people like us will volunteer and go and sit and work with them. Because we deserve the civil service that we get. They are poorly paid, very poorly paid. You pay a man part-free money and you ask him to be responsible for budgetary allocations. What do you think he will do if he does not fear God? If he doesn't value, he will steal it. So we need to rebuild our institution. And one of the institutions we need to rebuild is to look at our judiciary. Because even if you have potential, if you have entered into business with people, and they need to come to Nigeria and look at what needs to be done, our judiciary ready? Unfortunately, we're going from worse to worse. All of us, the judges their children are now being taken over to take over from them a number of things. I'm praying that the new Chief Justice will begin to do some work. We need to build institution. And detail for the institution of the church. We need to look at it. What is our role? I was talking to someone, I was fighting. I said, if you look at all of those big churches, we see we're doing a lot of estate and co. It's good. But there's a lot we can do about going back to what those missionary people did at first and how they put strength into us and our life and let the church stand for what we need to do. In those days, if you wanted to take anything from the embassy or even a bank, there were only two people that would sign your book as witnesses. Only two. The banker and your pastor. They didn't need anything from anybody. Today, which embassy will take pastor? Which embassy will take banker? Because you go there with your idea, and they take the idea of you, and they do another thing. So we need to rebuild all of those institutions. And I think, more than everything, we need to go back and try and build the institution of marriage. Hello? Charity always begins at home. All those leaders you talk about, they came from somewhere. I am told that if you want to get a big man in the north and you want to get him to sit down, go and meet his grandmother. That they revere their grandmother. And there were some things we were doing about how do we change mindset and co. And it was clear to us. We were first running to the emirs. But when we began to see their grandmother to intervene, and they will listen, we need to make sure we take our homes back and do a good work. The other thing, apart from leadership, apart from strengthening institution, is that we need to begin to walk about bridging the divide. It's not by accident that God made us a polarized nation with all the things we have. Today, when we say Abi Hausa, Abi Igbo, Abi Yoruba, and we keep fighting amongst ourselves. And sometimes when I look at them, when they do businesses, it doesn't work. When they get to National Assembly, after that fight, I know some people that almost died because of Labour or APC or what have you. When they go to the National Assembly, can we see the difference? Hello? The first car has the ball for all of them. Did you see any difference? No complaint. And then we fight ourselves. But again, because there is no trust, because we've lost, we've become so silo, forgetting that God put strength in each of these regions, and we have capacity that if we liberate, it can work. We haven't done that. So we need to begin to build bridges across. In those days when we were young, it was very right for a Yoruba man to marry Igbo and to marry across. Today, everybody has gone back to their tent. Please, how do we do this? It is something that both the church and both the nation will have to deliberately do it. When the NYSC was set up, the intention of the NYSC was that we are going to what? We know Nigeria, we relate. But today, everybody will struggle to make sure you serve only what? In the South. Brethren, look, let me tell you, and those who are listening to us, there are a lot of potentials in Nigeria that we can harness, that we can make good. But we have to leave these soft issues we don't talk about. It's important that we talk about them. I want to tell Brother Roland, when you were talking about the economy model does not work. The same model is the same thing. Bros, it is what we do with what we have. Our decision to make it work. More often than not, we say it doesn't work in Nigeria. Says who? The same thing works in Nigeria. But we need to get ourselves back to a position where there is trust, where there is hope, where there is confidence, where we all talk together as brothers and don't see ourselves as enemies. I want to say that there's a lot of role for those of us that are young. You've been told the mean age of Nigeria is 18. 18. This is where, and if you look at Europe and look at everywhere, they're aging. But we need to begin to build those skills. I will have talked about skills and competencies. Kola did a lot of work about it. Everyone talk about it, that we need to build. And the church have a role. The community have a role. Governments need to have a role. Anyway, let me tell you, the way education is delivered is going to change significantly within the next 10 years. Because what? Technology. You can reach many people with technology. At least today we see people sit in Nigeria and working internationally. There's a lot that Nigeria can deliver. There's a lot that is available for us as a people. But we need to begin to remove fear, mistrust, division. The government must show the way, but we, our people, must live it. Again, I want to say, Mr. President, help us live. We need cash in Nigeria. And one way to getting cash is what? Those assets that are wasting. Let us begin to leverage them. We don't have to do joint venture. We can raise about $40-50 million from our billion dollars from our balance sheet by making ourselves believable, by making ourselves people that stands in contract. To governors, the people are living very close to you. We're getting resources today, and we're not meeting the needs of our people. Somebody talk about the out-of-school children. Out-of-school children today is almost about the second largest in the world. Why are people not going to school? It doesn't have to be done in the Western approach. President Jonathan did a lot of work about the Alumanjiri system, and it's abandoned. Let's begin to work and bring them there. And thirdly, let us do a population control. We cannot continue to grow the way we are growing with limited resources and think we'll be better. You know, one day Each time I ask my friends in the other faith, they will say, well, they allowed them to marry more wives. So I now got involved with some scholars in Africa here. And when I got to Morocco, I saw their people, their professors, and I asked them, and I said, what kind of Muslim faith are you practicing? And they said the same thing like your people. I said, how come you don't have? He said the emir had instituted it, that if you cannot take care of one wife very well and provide for their need, if you marry a second wife, it's a state problem. Today we have young people that we should give school, we should give work to, but what governors are doing is to marry them away. The people that were Lumanjiris, when I was living in Zaria, are people today who are grandfathers, and they have about 16, 17 children all over the place. We need to work on our population. But again, come back to the youth. And they have said it a lot about fast money. There is no fast money anywhere. Hello? You know, one day I was shocked when I realized that they have Association of Yahoo Mothers. Yes. They are praying for their children to have money. Please, we need a lot to do. And you know, the social media is very good. But listen to what they said. What are you seeing? I wonder, people get out of Nigeria, we jackpot and get out. Each time we come back, the planes are loaded. The white people are coming. What do you see? Do you see problem or see opportunities? How are you using the social media? Are you using the social media to enhance your knowledge and use your knowledge to bring many people together towards a prosperous Nigeria? Or you are using the social media just to do whatever? I'm thankful that Professor Waziri talked about trafficking. I want to urge us, there is no nation that is better than this country. And if you follow what goes on across the world, you are seeing that those that jackpot are complaining everywhere. And people are looking at what can they return. We just need our government to level with us, tell us the truth, and make themselves more believable, and then leave what they say. Everyone will know the cost of doing government is high. Cut it down. Today, he was talking about what we spend money on. Labour too must talk very well. He was talking when our budget is just about a third of South Africa, and yet we are paying money that we cannot pay. But I trust that Nigeria is redeemable. Nigeria is where we can stop. But you see, I want to thank this church for the things you are doing and for the things you will continue to do on this platform. But please, I want to end on this note, very prophetic note. I know this is blown to everybody in the world, whether you're of the Christian faith or not of Christian faith. But the foundation of my standing is who I believe in. And here he says, okay, let me read it. He talks about, please show it. Isaiah chapter 49, verses 24 to 26. Shall the prey be taken from the mighty, or the lawful captive delivered? Maybe we have made ourselves a captive by the way we've lived our life, and we have entered one chance. Yeah, by the way we voted, by things we're doing, we have entered one chance. Here, we hear what God is saying concerning Nigeria. He said, but thus saith the Lord, even the captives of the mighty shall be taken away, and the prey of the terrible shall be delivered. For I will contend with him that contended with thee, and I will save their children, and I will feed them that oppress thee with their own flesh, and they shall be drunken with their own blood, as with sweet wine, and all flesh shall know that I, the Lord, am thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. That is the word of God for Nigeria. And I know that if you japa, you will jakpada. Because God will deliver us as a nation. Thank you and God bless you.